The roots of Hitler's subterranean empire were planted long before the first bombs ever fell on Berlin. In the early 1930s, while Germany was still rebuilding its shattered pride from the Treaty of Versailles, a new kind of warfare was already being imagined, one that would be fought not only across the skies and seas, but beneath the earth itself. The concept of underground fortifications, bunkers, and hidden factories was not unique to the Nazis, yet under Hitler's rule, it evolved from a mere. The first seeds were sown by Organization Todt, the vast engineering and construction corps named after its founder, Fritz Todt. Originally established to build the Autobahn network, Organization Todt quickly became the backbone of Nazi infrastructure and later, its war machine. With the outbreak of World War II in 1939, Todt's teams were redirected toward military projects, Atlantic Wall fortifications, U-boat pens, armament factories, and crucially, the construction of subterranean facilities design. As early as 1940, when the Luftwaffe began to experience the first retaliatory strikes from the Allies, German strategists foresaw a time when their own cities would be targets. The underground offered both concealment and protection. Hitler approved several preliminary studies for converting abandoned mines and quarries into weapons depots and aircraft assembly plants. These experiments would become the blueprint for the vast labyrinths that emerged later in the war. When Fritz Todt died in a mysterious plane crash in 1942, his successor Albert Speer inherited not only his title, but also his obsession with monumental architecture. Speer understood that the war was shifting toward industrial endurance. Whoever could keep their factories running longer would win. But as Allied bombers crippled the surface infrastructure, Speer turned his eyes downward. He envisioned a network of subterranean cities that could preserve the Reich's productive capacity even in total ruin. This was the birth of a new kind of empire, one unseen by daylight. By 1943, the Reich's industrial centers were under relentless bombardment. The city of Hamburg had been incinerated during Operation Gomorrah. Cologne and Dresden would follow. Production of aircraft, tanks, and rockets had to continue. Yet factories were no longer safe above ground. Thus began the U-Verlegering, or Underground Relocation Program, an enormous logistical operation to move vital industries into caves, tunnels, and specially dug complexes across Central Europe. Over 1,200 such projects were initiated, stretching from Bavaria to the Sudetenland, from the Harz Mountains to the Austrian Alps. Some were small, converted cellars, railway tunnels, and limestone quarries, but others were colossal undertakings, involving the excavation of entire mountainsides. The SS provided the labor, drawn from concentration camps like Buchenwald, Dachau, and Mauthausen. For many of these prisoners, their final resting place would be the same tunnels they built. To Hitler, these underground structures represented not desperation, but adaptation. He spoke often of the invincible organism, a metaphor for Germany itself, which, like a creature of the deep, would survive catastrophe by burrowing into the darkness. The propaganda machine amplified this image, portraying the Führer as a visionary who could reshape nature itself to protect his people. At the same time, scientists and engineers began to see new possibilities in these subterranean sanctuaries. Away from the prying eyes of Allied reconnaissance, research into advanced weapons, including the V-2 rocket, jet propulsion, and experimental energy sources, could continue in secrecy. Deep within the mountains, technology and ideology merged into a single fever dream, the idea that the Reich could be reborn stronger beneath the ground, preparing for a final counterstroke that would one day. But behind the polished rhetoric lay horror. Conditions in the construction sites were inhuman. Prisoners worked 16-hour shifts, often without proper ventilation or food, surrounded by toxic dust and constant risk of collapse. SS overseers shot anyone who slowed down. Bodies were buried in the walls of tunnels, entombed with the concrete they helped pour. Historians estimate that more than 200,000 forced laborers perished in these subterranean projects, an empire literally built on bones. Among the earliest major constructions was Mittelwerk, located near Nordhausen in the Harz Mountains. Originally a gypsum mine, it was converted into an eine underground rocket factory producing the V-2, the world's first ballistic missile. Inside its tunnels, thousands of skeletal workers assembled engines and warheads under appalling conditions. The project's overseers, including General Hans Kammler, would later become central figures in other secret sites like Reich, a complex so vast that its true for the Nazi leadership, each success fueled further ambition. Hitler ordered the creation of Vorhauptquartier, secret command headquarters built deep underground, shielded from bombardment and designed to serve as regional centers of control. The most famous of these would be the Wolf's Lair in East Prussia, a sprawling compound surrounded by forests and reinforced bunkers. Yet even this surface-level fortress could not satisfy the growing paranoia within the Nazi elite. Plans for even deeper mo. By the time the Allies began their invasion of Europe, Germany's obsession with subterranean survival had reached its zenith. Entire divisions of engineers were redirected underground. Railways were rerouted to feed hidden industrial hubs. In Austria, mountains were hollowed out to store aircraft and fuel reserves. Some of these sites, such as Ebensee and St. Georgen and Ergussen, were rumored to host experimental research linked to atomic development, though these claims remain shrouded in secrecy and ... In truth, the underground empire was never unified. It was a patchwork of desperation, built in haste with conflicting priorities and catastrophic human costs. Yet to the Nazi leadership, it symbolized hope, a final sanctuary for the Reich's ideals as the world above burned. Hitler saw himself as a modern pharaoh, his monuments not rising into the sky but sinking into eternity. By late 1944, the Reich was collapsing on all fronts. But in Hitler's imagination, the future still existed beneath the soil. There, in darkness, he believed Germany's rebirth awaited, a nation purified by struggle, immune to defeat, hidden until its enemies were gone. What began as a strategic necessity had evolved into mythology. And as the war neared its apocalyptic end, this mythology would take physical shape in the Reich complex, a labyrinth so enormous and mysterious that even today it defies full understanding.